This piece of cherry here is part of today's experiment. I'm calling it an experiment because I've not done one of these. I've never seen one in person. But I have an older American woodturner magazine, and there's a picture of what I will be attempting. It's made out of wedges, and I'm going to try 30 wedges on this. As I say, it's an experiment. If this works out, we'll do something a little fancier. So when you look at these pieces put together and some of the pictures in that magazine, it looks like magic happens during the process. So let's get going on this, see if I can pull a rabbit out of the hat and do that magic and have success at the end. Stick around and see how it turns out. I'll be using these two pieces of wood in today's turning. This is a piece of walnut and that's a piece of cherry. I've already ripped them to just a little under 3 inches in width. I've got my sled set up here and a stop. I'll be cutting them around 3 inches in length. It's going to look the same, so I'll show you a little bit of the cutting and then we'll move on to the next step. Alright, it's time to cut these pieces into angles. I'll be cutting 12 degrees, basically from corner to corner. That'll give me 2 pieces. And I need a total of 30. Half will be walnut, half will be cherry. And 30 pieces times the 12 degrees makes a 360-degree circle. That's why I need 30. So I also want them to be end grain going up when I cut. So I put a mark on here so I don't get them confused because they are basically square. I made a little cutting fixture here, and this is a 12-degree angle, and I'll have it in my bandsaw this way. I put a little saddle on here so it'll hook the fence. It'll just make it easier to have that in place while I cut through. Let me go ahead and show you how I cut these. Alright, that worked quite well, and actually looking at the joints, I may not have to do anything to them. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of them. It'll look just like what I did here, and I'll be back for the next step, which will be gluing these together. This is what it would look like if you just assembled it. It would look like staves meeting in the middle, meaning they were radial. They all meet in the middle radially. And these look fairly straight up and down. That's not what I'll be attempting to do today. I've made this little block to put down between them. Let me see if I can get this spread apart. These rubber bands are pretty powerful. And I'll give you a little preview on what I hope it looks like. So now they're tilted on an angle. You can see they closed up here and it opened up there. I'm going to take these apart, get glue on them, and try to reassemble it, and hopefully they all close together nicely, and I'll let it sit and we can go to the next step. Okay, here we go. In a few seconds, you're going to see me assemble these pieces, and I'll count them out, and I'll count 28. Well, because these are tangent and not radial, the angle changes, so it takes 28 to complete the circle. I'll explain more later. 728. Okay, let's get the rubber bands on it. Put one more on top. Okay, now let's see if we can get this plug in here. Okay, got it started. Now, got another plan. This is my glue press. I also want to drop these on, just have them ready. I'll push this down and see how it fits. You can see it spreading, and wow, they look like they have closed up pretty nice. And I don't know if this is going to help, but I'm going to put this in here to try to flatten them all to the same level. Well, I don't know. Looks good to me. Looks good from my house. Well, here's the glue block, and I did put it in a cardboard box, and I brought it inside so it would be nice and warm. It sat all night. It's ready to turn. I mentioned I want to explain a little bit about what's going on here. When you glue something together like this, this is tangent to that circle. Instead of radial to the center, it's tangent to this circle. It's also tangent to the one that's down here on the bottom of that plug. And that's what creates this twist. Just because it pulls them in and they just automatically put that slope on there. And as I was counting them, I wanted to make sure there was 28 because when I did the dry fit, I knew that's how much it would take to close it. And the reason it takes 28 instead of 30 is these become a compound angle instead of just a regular angle. So compound angles are a little trickier. Doing the math on it, 28 of these would be 12.85 degrees. But I didn't measure that. These are all cut on 12 degrees. The difference between this type of a glue up and a normal glued up ring is this is radial. All points meeting in the middle. That would go for these segments as well. If you projected all of the points of the angles, they would meet in the middle. So I could have put some wax on this plug and popped it out, but I decided because I turned this plug on a worm screw, I still had the hole on there, so I'm going to use that to mount it. We'll get this flattened and we'll start turning a shape on it. So let me get that mounted up and we'll get going. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and use that center I have on the bottom of this plug as well. We'll get this tightened up. And let's see how it runs. Not too bad. Got a 1/2 bolt gouge and we'll be turning at 750 RPM. Well, here's a little different angle. I think it looks pretty cool. I'll get that bottom flattened out and that might help me decide the shape a little more. Same 1/2 bolt gouge, same 750 RPM. going to round this over a little bit with the negative rake scraper. I'm going to get set up and I'm going to drill this out and get a piece of wood out, and I'll glue it here for the base. I decided on a piece of bloodwood for this base, and it's oversized, but that's okay. I want to get it glued on and do some more shaping and see what we end up with. Just give that a little twist. This glue's been sitting for a couple hours. I think I'll go ahead and blend this in and decide how big I want that base to be. And about 700 RPM with the 1/2 inch bowl gouge. That whining sound that you hear was, I still had my lathe in low range, so it was spinning a lot faster than it needed. And I had it in low range because I was drilling the hole. But you can see I have it flipped around. I went ahead and put a recess in it. I flipped it around and I flattened this area here. These were sticking up. It was pretty bouncy, and I went ahead and got it flat. I'm going to go ahead and cut this plug out of here. I think this is a piece of sweet gum. It'll cut pretty decently. The rest of this is end grain, and we'll just start cutting and see how it works out. But you really have a hard time starting here and going down on end grain. I'll probably have to go to the bottom and come back up, and I may end up using carbide hollowing tools to do it. I've got a freshly sharpened 1/2 inch bowl gouge, and we're going around 750 RPM, maybe turn it up a little bit, 850. I drilled that 2 1/8 inch hole there, and I didn't show that either. So that's actually end grain itself. So I'm just going to go ahead and get the hollowing tool, and let's just try to get rid of some material. So I just need to keep checking my wall here. Right about there I have 1/4 inch. I don't really want to get any more off of that. And then right here, that's about 5/8. So I'll do some cutting. I'll have to go in here and check it, see where I'm at, and I'll stop every once in a while and show you what's going on. And the carbide is doing, it's easier, I'll just say that. Well, I think I almost have it, but for about a 1/2 inch there, it comes in and it almost gets flat, and I want it to be rounded. So we're going to take a little bit more off of that. Famous last words. 900 RPM, 1/2 inch bowl gouge. Okay, I think that's much better. Use a negative rag scraper to clean that up. And you can tell that's getting fairly thin there. So it's making a lot of noise. And it's end grain. I think I'm going to call that good, and we'll go ahead and sand it. Time to sand, and it's fairly smooth. So I'll start with 120 grit on a 2-inch disc. I have the lathe running in reverse about 500 RPM. I won't be able to reach some of this, so I'll use sheets of paper to do it. I'll go ahead and do the inside now, and then I'll work my way up to 400, and I'll be back and we'll get the finish on it. I've got it all sanded 400 on the outside and the inside. I'll be spraying this with lacquer, but I'll do something a little different first. I've got some Minwax lacquer sanding sealer. I'm going to put a coat of that on. I want to make sure it gets soaked in really good. Boy, that's really bringing the colors out of this wood. I think this is looking pretty nice for an experiment. I went over the sanding sealer with 400 grit sandpaper and wiped it down. Now I'll use this white Scotch-Brite. And that's very smooth, and it's actually got a nice finish with just the sanding sealer. But I'm going to go ahead and spray it with gloss Deft lacquer. Okay, that worked good. I'll just do the inside. That's going to be hard to see, and I'll come back and maybe spray another coat on the outside. I ended up getting 5 coats of lacquer on this, and I've just wiped some abrasive paste on it. I'm going to go ahead and work this in and then polish it. I recently did a video on how I use abrasive paste and polish, so if you want to see the exact steps that I do, I'll put a link in the description for that. But I'll go ahead and get this polished, and I'll be right back and show you what we ended up with. Okay, I just finished up putting the Acks polish restoring paste on here and wanted you to see this finish. It is amazing. Alright, I'll get it out of the chuck and show you what we have. Well, here it is, and I am very happy with how it turned out. It's about 6 inches in diameter and 3 inches tall. It's made from walnut, cherry, and a piece of bloodwood for the base, which shows through on the inside. And I think that inside is really cool. I used 5 coats of spray-on lacquer, Acks abrasive paste, and polish to get a glass-like finish. So, yeah, I did see a picture of this in a very old American woodturner magazine. I think it was 8 or 10 years old when I saw it. And I just thought, you know, that'd be fun to make, but how hard is it going to be? Well, it's only one way to find out, is to do it. And you know what? It really wasn't all that hard. And this has reminded me of something that we've had for quite some time. This is a vegetable steamer. And if you look at these sides, like the little staves I used, as that closes, they overlap each other and allows it to get smaller. exactly the same thing that happens here. So there's all kinds of designs you could do, and I plan on doing more. And I really had a lot of fun making this, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did like the video, do me a favor and click that like button. And while you're there, it would be great if you could share the video around. Those two things will really help my channel grow. Leave a comment. I read them all, and I do my best to answer them all. Thanks to all my subscribers. And if you're not, please consider doing so. I do a mix of all types of turnings. Some are simple and some are complex, so let me know your favorite. Thanks again, and until the next time, see you later.